Yes, hello. My name is Jeppe Mørch, and I think I'll be touching upon some of the same themes as Kasper's, but of course my perspective will be a bit different as I am representing a publisher. I come from Denmark, where I work for the publisher Saga, and that is a publishing company under Egmont, and I'm the editor-in-chief at a division in Saga that focuses solely on retro-digitization, meaning that we look for former published books to be republished as ebooks and audiobooks at the Danish digital book market. And it's a great honor for me to be here at this conference. In this presentation, I will focus on themes regarding publishing in the AI era and in an AI future. And I will also have some suggestions on how these somewhat changing times could strengthen the collaboration between publishers, as myself, and digital libraries. I will, of course, also mention some potential pitfalls, because as I see it, as we see it, we are entering uncertain ground, and I think you should try to find the ideal position between optimism and skepticism. We can just take a common thing as the internet as an example. I think today you would sound silly if you, back in the day, tried to disregard the internet as a temporary tech toy that would just eventually fade away. But you will sound just as silly, just as absurd if you proclaim that the internet today has brought us nothing but happiness and well-being. So, here you can see a rundown of what I will be talking about today. I will begin my presentation with a brief introduction to AI today in the publishing world, and then I will move on to go through our digital strategy in Saga. And this will lead to some bullet points about the Danish literary system and how we have collaborated with this system ever since we were formed. I think that AI constitutes some new challenges in this collaboration, and luckily also some very interesting opportunities too. And I will end my presentation by listing some of our collaborative visions for making books and reading relevant in an AI era. So, AI has been here for a very long time, in fact. Back in the 1960s, there were experiments with simple chatbots, and in 1997, IBM had this computer called Deep Blue, who beat one of the best chess players in the world, Garry Kasparov. Throughout the years, AI have caused some to believe that the technology eventually will lead to the end of humanity and a kind of robotic takeover. And it has also been the theme in some great works of science fiction, like Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, and also Terminator. But reality, however, even today, is a bit less dramatic. The most used AI technologies of today are large language models and multimodal AI systems. And these systems can generate text, images, and video. And the language models can generate human-like conversational responses, and they can analyze vast amounts of data instantly. But I think it is important to state that there is no will behind them. The systems and the models do not want anything. The evolution of AI, or revolution of some might call it, is driven by these big tech companies and their commercial interests. And they, of course, aspire to make money of their great innovation. And this desire can be taken too far. And I think that the thing we fear as a publisher is that this uncontrolled AI playground somehow could result in content overflood. And that could both be AI content replicating human-made content, such as stories, images, video, and so on. But it could also be more nonsensical content, such as random noises put together in order to gain a small revenue stream on streaming services in a large scale. That's the dystopian scenario, a future of content flooding that enlightens nobody. We, on the other hand, are interested in AI as a human-controlled tool that could be used to make the literary heritage of Denmark available for a large audience. And in this strategy and this wish, the libraries are very important. And that is the key message today from me. We cannot roll back AI, so I think we have to figure out ways to take control and see if we can make a strategy and figure out what is best for the readers in Denmark and maybe also for the readers in Europe. My suggestion for both publishers and libraries will be not to reject this innovation. Instead, we must try to adapt with precaution in order to gain control in an uncontrolled environment. And of course, the publishers and the libraries will sometimes have disagreements on how and on how fast to implement different AI solutions. This makes sense. I am also representing a company, and we have to look at how we make the most money possible. And thus, our interests will sometimes differ. But in Saga, we also have some public service value that I know that we share with the libraries. And it is my hope that this could be the common ground on which we outline some sort of AI strategy. And now I will tell you a bit about the company I represent. Saga was formed 10 years ago, back in 2015, and it was formed in an attempt to make a digital publisher existing in a traditional publishing house. And our aim was to focus solely on digital titles. Back in 2015, the movie and the music industry had already been experiencing a massive digitization, but it had not yet been done effectively in the book industry. We knew that if this should be done, quantity would be key. We needed several thousand titles in order to stay relevant for both the resellers, the libraries, and the readers. And we also needed thousands of titles to make enough money to create a healthy business. Therefore, we aimed at digitizing 15,000 titles in 3 years, and we succeeded. Today, we have published 33,000 ebooks and 18,000 audiobooks, and that's just in the Danish language. We also publish books in a variety of European languages. And this vast catalog consists of, I think, every possible genre and category there is. The size of our catalog is still where we stand out from our competitors in Denmark. We are constantly trying to work on republishing as much of the Danish literary heritage as possible, and we are very proud of this work. We go about it with a lot of thoroughness and respect for each book and the author behind it. And this somewhat idealistic approach is, of course, complemented by years of accumulated knowledge about the Danish book markets and about the economic aspect of the publishing world. And I think by having embraced the digitization of Danish literature earlier than other publishing houses, we have created a culture for working in detail with the gigantic data sets. We sometimes say that we work with what other publishers might find too troublesome, simply too irritating. And we strive each day to hit this right balance between quantity and quality. There is an enormous diversity in our publications. We have a catalog of progressive LGBT titles, and at the same time, we have published all of Barbara Cartland's books, in which the more traditional gender patterns are portrayed. We have titles written by explorers in the 19th century, and if these were made today, they would of course seem both outdated and dehumanizing. But we actually take pride in making these historical documents available, because we believe that we believe in the idea that we can only understand ourselves as society today by examining the unedited history. And in my department, we do not see it as our job to have AI create content to be read online. On the contrary, we want to use AI as a kind of vehicle to find new readers and to have these readers engage in a dialogue with our titles, written many years ago by actual authors. And I think that if we are using AI to create translations or covers or something like that, we need human eyes on everything. We need to approve all material that has been brought up by AI. And now I will talk a bit about the digital streaming service of the Danish libraries. It's called EBLIDA, the electronic bookshelf, and it was launched all the way back in 2011, and that was 4 years before we in Saga started investing heavily in digitization. Up until this point, audiobooks and digital titles had primarily been used for visually impaired people and for people with dyslexia. But back in 2010 and in the coming years, new technologies such as the iPod and the iPhone made it possible for people to listen to audiobooks while doing other things. And so it steadily became an important format for libraries and for publishing houses. This way, EBLIDA can be seen as a very early attempt to embrace digital innovation by the Danish libraries. And the numbers that I have up here show that this attempt has to be seen as a success. 3 years in 2014, EBLIDA had 2.6 million digital loans. And 10 years later, last year, in 2024, the number has increased to almost 10 million loans. And that is in a population of just 6 million people. The big question when looking at these numbers is whether this is good or bad for reading habits in Denmark. Or put in another way, does the digital and physical book market compete, or do they somehow supplement each other? To me and to us in Saga, it would be a wrong perspective to look at this at a competition, because today books do not solely compete with books for people's attention. The publishing world competes with social media, podcasts, sports events, streaming, and so on. The battle for attention online is brutal, and I think the right answer to this battle is to secure availability and to work with curation, simply to embrace digital innovation without losing control. And this could also be put in other words. I think the publishing world and the libraries should work together to secure a better position in this race or battle for attention. We have worked together with the Danish libraries and EBLIDA ever since we were formed back in 2015. Back then, the same year as we started, some of our biggest competitors in Denmark chose not to be represented at EBLIDA. They saw this free alternative as an unfair competitor in an emerging market, while we, on the other hand, saw it as an important way to gain more readers and to get the Danish people to be interested in a digital book market altogether. Our thought was the same as it is today regarding AI. We cannot invert the digital innovation, but we can try to shape how this innovation will turn out in a local market, in a local environment. And it's also important to state that we do not just do this based on ideology. We are constantly trying to embrace digital innovation because it is good business. We make money having these beliefs. EBLIDA is today, in fact, our biggest retailer, and we are guaranteed payment every time one of our titles is being read online at their service. Today, I think it is certain to say that we were right back then. Now we know that a commercial market can in fact exist side by side with EBLIDA, or a digital streaming service of a library. As I mentioned earlier, we publish all of Barbara Cartland's books, and not one of her titles is represented at EBLIDA, because they have chosen not to accept them there, as they are free to select and deselect any title they want. And still, Barbara Cartland is in fact our best-selling author of all time. And that means we are a company, and we want to make money. And we have shown that it is indeed possible to do so based on these principles regarding availability and technology embracement I've just mentioned. The libraries make it possible for us to publish more niche titles about almost everything, but at the same time we want to publish best-selling commercial authors like Daniel Steele and Barbara Cartland. And that is just another way of saying that we want to digitize as much of the literary heritage as possible. And to elaborate a bit more about these synergies between Saga and the Danish libraries. Even though our starting point is commercial, as I mentioned earlier, I think we share some public service interest with the libraries. We have now, in 10 years, developed a profitable business, making the Danish literary heritage available digitally, and the Danish libraries have been very important in shaping this strategy. We would, of course, prefer that they had just accepted all of our titles, all of the hundreds of books Barbara Cartland wrote during her lifespan. But EBLIDA is, of course, not created to please us. They must constantly ask themselves what is best for the readers, and they have to act upon the answers they have to that question. And we have to accept the line they choose. And instead of focusing on the differences, we try to locate the areas where we can actually collaborate. For a long period of time, when we started, we mainly digitized fiction because we thought that we could earn most money there. But in the last 5 years, we have also turned to nonfiction. And when we started this project, we initiated a collaboration to have several hundred titles digitized together with EBLIDA. We talked to them about themes and specific authorships and titles, and today these titles are in fact available digitally. Without this concrete example, these titles would be almost impossible to find anywhere and to read. We actually know that some of our titles are being read very few times. Some might not even be read at all, but by putting them all out there, by making them available, we have made room for some pleasant revenue surprises. And the overall idea is that if we put all of our IPs together, we will accumulate a high enough revenue during the years to have a healthy business. And that is a strategy also sometimes referred to as the long tail. And this strategic availability actually creates new readers in Denmark. The sales numbers for physical books are decreasing, but at the same time, the number of readers is actually increasing. And that is simply due to the digital market. Our catalog share at the Danish digital market is 37% for audiobooks and 47% for ebooks. So, even though some of our titles will be read only a few times, we are creating new readers in this before-mentioned battle of attention online. And here are some of the potential pitfalls I mentioned to begin with. This AI revolution that we are experiencing right now is driven by big tech companies, and they of course want to make money on their innovation. And there's nothing shady about that. In fact, it can be seen as an incentive to make the best possible product, because if the AI technology does not convince the user in just minutes that it will be a help, I think the large majority would simply stop using it. And that being said, the AI landscape, as it is seen today, is to a large degree without any regulations. And that is why this fear is existing that this could eventually result in content overflood of nonsense, of tracks and videos and book titles without any understandable message, merely designed to generate revenue if enough people click on it. And this dystopian future of nonsense overflooding will of course not make publishers or libraries irrelevant. Instead, I think this scenario suggests how important curation and availability is going to be in this AI era. The new times that we are living in right now have also resulted in some resistance from content creators, such as translators, graphic designers, and audiobook narrators. Their unions have issued statements on how AI can be seen as a threat against human-made content. And personally, I understand their reluctance. I think all of us in this room love books, and a future where literature in itself is created by soulless robots and algorithms is, of course, scary to any one of us. But again, I will just argue that we simply cannot, the publishers, the libraries, and society altogether, reverse this development. And instead of insisting on not using this technology, I think we should try to figure out how we can use it the best way possible. And to do so, we must always keep this question in mind that I mentioned before: what is best for the readers? Actually, I don't believe in a future where literature is made by algorithms or these advanced language models. I think instead we can try to take control now, and then we might be able to invent a strategy where AI is used as a tool for us, so it will never be the other way around. There's just one more aspect of pitfalls that I will mention here. At the moment, AI is a very hot topic, especially in Denmark, in the news coverage, and journalists seems very interested when AI results in errors, and what we as editors might see as minor mistakes in a book can be seen as a huge error by some, and these errors will get attention. That's my experience. And that is, of course, not to say that everyone should just accept books with errors in them. Of course not. It's just a reminder that this field is being investigated thoroughly these years, and that is just a tricky environment to do experiments in. But the good news is that the new landscape also provides us all with new opportunities. And right now, we can try to show the readers how it is indeed possible to work with AI in a responsible and human-oriented manner. And this path, I think, has to be paved with content that has been approved by human eyes every time. We need to stand for quality, both publishers and libraries, and literature full of passion in order to stay relevant. And in my department, in Saga, we see a vast retro catalog as a kind of stronghold against AI-generated content made without human interaction. When a reader has found one of our titles through the Danish libraries, preferably, he or she might also be able to interact in the text via AI solutions in the future. And this way, as we see it, AI will also become a tool of discoverability. At the moment, we try to provide each of our titles with very detailed metadata, meaning text about the text. And this is the best way of working with curation as is. But I think there's no doubt that AI will be able to make improvements for our metadata in the coming years. And this will help us. It will also, I think, make it cheaper for us to make metadata. But I think it will be an even bigger help for the readers in their online quest to find what they're really interested in. If we are reminding ourselves that we are made to serve the readers, this is indeed a very interesting time to be a publisher or a librarian, I think. We can become more relevant than ever if we serve as a guide, as some sort of modern or digital version of Virgil in the Divine Comedy, instead of letting our role be replaced by big tech. And speaking of references, before I entered the publishing world, I was studying film science at the University of Copenhagen. And there I got hooked on silent films. And in one of my favorite movies of that era, Metropolis from 1927, AI is in fact one of the main themes, and especially how wicked leaders can use robots and technology to suppress an entire population. And the people in Metropolis, by Fritz Lang, solved this threat by using their hearts as a facilitator between working hands and unemotional brains. The solution to an emerging dystopian society for them is to include human compassion when making big decisions. And as they say in the silent film, the mediator between the head and the hands must always be the heart. The pitfall, back to reality, is that you online no longer just read what you are actually interested in, but that your interests are instead determined by algorithms to a point where it becomes a kind of indifferent consumption of content. But we, the libraries and the publishers, must try to fight back on this, I think. Much of our lives today is happening at a rather small screen, and this can of course be seen as limiting, but we have to see this as an opportunity too, as a gateway to wonders of literature and shared knowledge. And I think shared knowledge is really an important concept in a political landscape where truth itself is under attack. A specific way to chase this goal is to make sure that thousands of non-fiction books are available online and at the digital libraries. And we are working on making these vast catalogs available on the Danish libraries. And I think we should try to work together to secure availability for these titles and for the public. So, to sum up and have some conclusions about these collaborative visions, we, in my publishing house, simply believe that it is not possible to invert the AI revolution. And the good news is that it does not have to be problematic. On the contrary, we firmly believe that AI can be used as an advanced tool for both publishers and libraries in order to help the people we are supposed to serve, the readers. And I think that if we adapt now and find new ways of working together, we might be able to take control in this Wild West landscape. Both publishers and libraries compete with TV streaming, podcasts, sport events, YouTube, and social media. Our competitors in the publishing world are no longer other local publishing houses, but global entities with huge marketing budgets. There's a battle of attention going on, and we have to figure out how to stay relevant in a digital era where fewer people are reading physical books. We have shown that our strategy and our goal of digitizing the Danish literary heritage can create new readers and a good business for us. And that's one way to measure whether we are still relevant or not. Do we make money, and can we maintain a healthy business? We believe that we will be able to stay relevant if we use AI as a way to enhance availability and curation in a potentially overflooded digital market. As examples, we can use AI to make better metadata, and hopefully AI will provide the readers with ways of interacting with these old texts. As an example, if you are a student writing a paper, AI might be able to suggest every relevant text and article so that you don't miss out on important knowledge on a subject. You still have to read these texts yourself. AI have just helped you find them. In these early days of new AI technology, there's been a lot of focus on how it can be used to generate plagiarized content, whether this is a school paper or an entire book. And that is true. It has become easier than ever to cheat with these text models. But at the same time, it has never been easier to search for and discover plagiarized content. And I think that's something to remember when we are talking about AI. It can be used for a lot of things, but it all starts with an intention. And AI cannot replicate human intention. And that is our big opportunity. That is why it is possible to take control of AI instead of letting AI control us. As I've mentioned several times now, I think the publishing houses and the libraries will be able to work together to find these golden pathways through somewhat confusing times. And I think we should work together whenever it makes sense. And as a starting point, we can try to make this division. As a publisher, I think we should try to focus on these vast catalogs, making as many titles available as possible. And I think for the libraries, availability and curation should be the main themes. A focus on curation could also be based on how to communicate relevant themes and authorships and titles to readers. And I think that is at least one way to stay relevant in the AI era, to insist on having humans communicate to humans with the help of the technology available, just like we have always done, from Gutenberg to the invention of the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mørch. We're sort of on a time where everybody is probably looking forward to a cup of coffee, but maybe time for one question from the room, if there is anyone. Or you're all desperate for coffee?
One in the back.
Oh, one in the back. Yeah.
Do we have a microphone or do I have to shout? Okay.
You should come forward, Mikkel. You're usually not that modest. Come on.
No, it's okay. Why is it that you, when your publishing house has had such great success collaborating with the Danish libraries, why is it, do you think, that almost every other European publishing houses view digital publishing as a zero-sum game and are trying to edge out the libraries from the scene altogether, when there is your example of how you have benefited from it and made the pie bigger rather than fighting for a smaller piece? What is it that your European colleagues are not understanding, and why can't you convince them to do otherwise? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Well, we think that is a really good question ourselves. And we actually, as I mentioned, we are publishing books in Sweden, in Germany, in French, in English. And we have tried for several years to make collaborations with the libraries in all of these different countries. In Finland and in Sweden, we have succeeded. We have collaborations, but it is not as detailed and big as it is in Denmark. So we hope, maybe by standing up here and making a presentation like this, that more of you, more of the European libraries, will indeed become interested in making such collaborative experiments, and not being afraid of working together with a commercial partner.
Thank you. I think we need some more disciples here as well. It's clear to me that the message of this morning is evangelists and disciples, of spreading the word, of working together is a very good idea on this topic.